June 6, 1944, 05:47 a.m. Aboard LCA 1015, English Channel. The sea wanted us dead before the Germans ever got the chance. I could feel it in the way the landing craft pitched and rolled, metal groaning like it was already giving up. Cold spray whipped over the ramp, soaking through wool and canvas, turning everything heavy. 32 men packed shoulder to shoulder in a steel coffin, and all of us pretending we weren't counting the minutes until that ramp dropped. I was 23 years old, a sergeant in Company A, 116th Infantry Regiment, 29th Division. They called us the Blue and Gray, half Virginia, half Maryland, all of us a long way from home. My job was simple: get my men off the beach alive. The kind of order that sounds clean on paper and turns to blood in practice. Around me, faces flickered in and out of shadow. Jenkins kept his eyes closed, lips moving in silent prayer. Kowalski checked his rifle for the 4th time in 10 minutes, fingers shaking just enough to notice. Private Daniels, the kid barely looked old enough to shave, stared at his boots like they held all the answers he'd never get to ask for. "Sarge." I turned. It was Henley, my machine gunner, cradling his M1919 like a newborn. "We really doing this?" "Yeah," I said. "We're really doing this." He nodded once, slow, then looked away. There wasn't much else to say. We'd been briefed 3 times. Omaha Beach, 4 miles of sand between us and France. Intel said light resistance, scattered pillboxes, maybe a few machine gun nests. Command expected us to push inland by noon, link up with the airborne, roll toward the hedgerows by nightfall. None of us believed it. I'd seen the aerial photos. Bluffs rising 100 feet above the beach. Concrete bunkers dug into the cliffs. Barbed wire, trenches, minefields. And behind all of it, the Atlantic Wall, Hitler's fortress, manned by men who'd had 4 years to dig in and wait for us. The engines throttled down. Somewhere up ahead, destroyers were shelling the coast, their guns booming like distant thunder. I could hear it through the hull, feel it in my chest. For a moment, I let myself believe it meant something, that all that firepower would soften them up, crack the defenses, give us a chance. Then the boat lurched sideways, and someone puked. "Steady," I said, though my own stomach was doing flips. "Won't be long now." Kowalski laughed, sharp, bitter. "That's what I'm afraid of." I didn't argue. Fear wasn't something you fought in moments like this. It was something you carried like your rifle or your pack. You just hoped it didn't get too heavy before you hit the sand. The lieutenant, a fresh-faced officer named Morse who joined us 2 weeks ago in England, leaned forward, shouting over the engine noise. "Remember the plan. Stay low, move fast, get to the shingle. Bangalore teams blow the wire, then we push through the draw." His voice cracked on the last word. No one looked at him. Plans. I'd been in North Africa, seen what happened to plans the second real bullets started flying. But orders were orders, and the only thing worse than a bad plan was no plan at all. So I nodded, checked my carbine one more time, and scanned my squad. 32 men. I knew most of their names. Knew Jenkins had a wife back in Richmond, that Kowalski's brother was in the Pacific, that Daniels had lied about his age to enlist. I knew these things the way you know the weight of your own gear, familiar, constant, impossible to forget. I didn't know how many of them would still be breathing in an hour. The boat shuddered again. Closer now. I could hear it, the dull thump of shells hitting the beach, the distant crackle of something burning. Through a crack in the ramp, I caught a sliver of gray sky, low clouds pressed flat against the horizon like they were trying to smother the whole damn invasion before it started. Someone muttered, "God help us." Another voice answered, quiet. He already did. Gave us each other. I didn't know who said it. Didn't matter. It was the kind of lie that felt true enough to hold on to. The coxswain's voice crackled through from the cockpit. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. I stood, bracing against the roll of the boat, and raised my voice. Listen up. When that ramp drops, you run. You don't stop, you don't think, you don't look back. You get to cover, you stay alive, and you do your job. That's it. That's all we got. No one cheered, no one saluted. They just stared, hollow-eyed, soaked, shaking. And I saw it then, clear as daylight. We were terrified, every last one of us. And there wasn't a damn thing courage could do about it. Courage wasn't something any of us carried. It was something we hoped to find on that beach, buried somewhere between the bullets and the bodies, waiting for us to be desperate enough to dig it up. The engine cut. The boat drifted forward on momentum alone, and in the sudden, terrible silence, I heard the first machine gun open fire. June 6th, 1944. 06:28 a.m., approaching Dog Green sector. The sound started small. A distant pop, 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 like firecrackers going off somewhere you couldn't see. Then it grew, sharper, closer. The kind of sound that bypassed your ears and went straight into your spine, turning your blood cold before your brain could catch up. MG-42s. German machine guns, firing at 1,200 rounds per minute. And they were firing at us. Contact front, someone screamed. But the words were swallowed by the roar of incoming fire. The boat lurched hard to starboard. A shell exploded 20 yards off the port side, gazering water high enough to block out the sky. The spray hit us like a fist, ice cold and sharp, and Jenkins lost his footing, crashing into Kowalski. Both went down in a tangle of limbs and equipment. "Stay on your feet," I shouted, but my voice felt thin, useless against the chaos rising around us. Another explosion, closer this time. The shockwave rippled through the hull, rattling my teeth. I grabbed the side rail, knuckles white, and risked a look over the edge. The beach. God help me, I could see the beach. It wasn't sand anymore. It was a killing field. Bodies floating in the surf, men crawling through blood-red foam, smoke pouring from burning landing craft. And beyond it all, the bluffs rising like judgment itself, studded with concrete bunkers spitting fire down onto everything that moved. "We're not going to make it," Daniels whispered beside me. His face had gone the color of old paper. "We will," I said. Lying had never come so easy. The coxswain was screaming something I couldn't make out. The boat swung left, engines straining, trying to find a gap in the carnage. Tracer rounds arced overhead, red streaks cutting through the gray dawn like something out of hell's own artillery. A shell hit the craft to our right. The explosion was blinding, white-hot. The sound came a heartbeat later, a bone-deep crunch that I felt in my lungs. Metal screamed. Fire bloomed. And then the boat was just gone, replaced by debris and body parts raining down into water that frothed and boiled. 30 men, gone, just like that. "Jesus Christ," someone sobbed. "Jesus Christ, Jesus Christ." "Quiet." Lieutenant Morse's voice cracked like breaking glass. He was gripping his Thompson so hard I thought the stock might splinter. "We hold it together. We—" A burst of machine gun fire ripped across the top of our ramp. Sparks flew, metal shredded. Morse stumbled backward, eyes wide, mouth open, and I saw the exacted moment he realized we were all about to die. The coxswain's voice cut through the screaming. "Ramp down in 10 seconds. Brace, brace." 10 seconds. I turned to my squad. Most of them had their heads down, shoulders hunched, rifles clutched like prayers. Henley was muttering something under his breath, a name, maybe, or a plea. Kowalski was stone still, staring at nothing. Jenkins had his eyes squeezed shut. "Listen to me." I grabbed the nearest man, Daniels, and pulled him close enough to see his pupils shaking. "You step off this ramp, you move left. You hear me? Left toward the obstacles. Don't stop, don't think. Just move." He nodded. Or maybe he was just shaking. I couldn't tell anymore. 5 seconds. The water below us was wrong. Too dark. Too thick. I realized with sick clarity that it wasn't just seawater anymore. 3 seconds. A mortar round hit somewhere behind us. The concussion wave slammed into the boat, tilting us forward. Someone screamed. Equipment scattered. My helmet rang like a bell. "Down! Get down!" 1 second. The ramp dropped. And hell came flooding in. Water, fire, noise so loud it stopped being sound and became something physical, something that pressed against your skull and squeezed. The machine guns opened up full bore, bullets chopping the surf into froth, tearing through the first men before they even cleared the ramp. Henley went down immediately. Just dropped. No sound. His machine gun splashing into water already red. "Move! Move!" Morse was screaming, shoving men forward, and they went, because staying in the boat meant dying in the boat. I grabbed my carbine and stepped into the water. It was deeper than it should have been. Chest high, cold enough to stop my heart. The current pulled at my legs, trying to drag me under, and the weight of my gear felt like it wanted to finish the job. A bullet snapped past my ear. Another hit the ramp behind me with a metallic ping. I pushed forward, saw Jenkins surface 10 feet ahead, gasping, rifle gone. Saw Kowalski thrashing in water too deep, pack dragging him down. Saw Daniels frozen at the ramp's edge, eyes locked on the bodies floating past. "Daniels, move!" He didn't move. A bullet took him in the chest. He stumbled backward, mouth open in surprise, and fell into the water without a sound. The kid who'd lied about his age to get here, gone. I didn't stop. Couldn't stop. The only direction was forward, into the bullets, into the smoke, into whatever came next. Someone grabbed my arm. Jenkins. Blood streaming down his face from a gash across his forehead, eyes wild. "Where do we go?" he screamed. I didn't know. The beach was supposed to have landmarks, draws, exits, positions we'd memorized from sand tables back in England. But through the smoke and spray, everything looked the same. Gray water, gray sand, gray death. "The obstacles." I pointed toward a line of steel hedgehogs jutting from the surf like broken teeth. "Get behind them." We pushed forward together. The water dragged at every step, turning simple movement into exhausting labor. My boots couldn't find purchase on the sand beneath. It shifted and slid, trying to trip me with every stride. A mortar round hit 30 yards to our right. The explosion threw up a column of water and body parts. The shockwave slapped us sideways. Jenkins went under. I grabbed his collar, hauled him up, kept moving. Kowalski surfaced near us, gasping, his rifle held high above his head, like a drowning man clutching driftwood. "Can't touch bottom," he shouted. "Can't swim," I yelled back. "Just swim." More men from our craft were in the water now. Some swimming, some sinking, some just floating, face down, already gone. Lieutenant Morse was somewhere behind us, still screaming orders that nobody could hear over the machine guns. The beach was 100 yards away. Might as well have been 100 miles. Another landing craft to our left took a direct hit. The explosion was enormous. Orange fire blooming against the gray morning. Debris rained down. A piece of the ramp splashed into the water beside me, still trailing smoke. The German gunners knew exactly where we'd land. They'd had years to measure the distances, register their fields of fire, turn this beach into a precision death trap. Every bunker, every trench, every pillbox had clear lanes of fire that overlapped and interlocked. There was nowhere to hide. Nowhere safe. A bullet zipped past so close, I felt the air split. Another punched into the water 6 inches from my chest. We reached the first obstacle, a steel hedgehog crusted with rust and barnacles. I grabbed it, pulled myself close, gasping. Jenkins collapsed against the other side. Kowalski made it 2 seconds later, chest heaving. For a moment, just a moment, we had cover. "Stay here," I managed between breaths. "Catch your breath." Then we moved to the next one. Jenkins nodded, but his eyes were somewhere else, seeing things I couldn't, things nobody should. Through the smoke, I caught glimpses of the beach itself. Bodies piled against the shingle wall, men crawling through the sand, leaving red trails. A Sherman tank burning near the waterline, ammunition cooking off inside, each explosion sending sparks spiraling into the sky. This wasn't a battle. It was a slaughter, and we were only at the beginning. "Sarge." Kowalski's voice was barely audible. He was staring past me, toward the craft we'd just left. I looked. The LCA was listing badly, half submerged, ramp still down. Bodies floated around it like driftwood. And standing at the edge of that ramp, frozen, was one man. Just standing there, staring at the water. "Someone's still on the boat," Kowalski said. "Leave him," Jenkins whispered. "We can't." But I was already moving, back toward the craft, back into the open water, back into the fire. I don't know why I did it. Maybe because leaving a man behind felt worse than dying. Maybe because I needed to believe we were still human enough to care. The machine guns found me immediately. Bullets stitched the water in neat rows, getting closer. I dove, went under, kicked hard. The world above dissolved into muffled thunder and shadow. When I surfaced, gasping, I was at the ramp. The man was Private Sullivan, a replacement who'd joined us in England. 20 years old, married, baby on the way. He looked at me with eyes that had stopped seeing. "I can't," he said simply. "I can't do it." "You can." I grabbed his webbing. "You have to." "I can't." A bullet sparked off the metal beside his head. He didn't even flinch. I pulled him into the water. He came without resistance, like a child being led by the hand. We made it 10 feet before the machine gun found us again. The burst hit Sullivan in the back. 3 rounds, maybe 4. He jerked once, then went limp in my arms. I held him for a second, just 1 second, then I let him go. The water took him gently, almost kindly, and he sank without a sound. I turned back toward the beach, toward the impossible distance still ahead, toward whatever pieces of us would be left when this was over, if anything was left at all. The water fought me every inch. Each step forward was a negotiation with gravity, with cold, with the weight of everything I carried. Rifle, pack, ammunition, grenades, all of it conspiring to drag me under. The sand beneath my boots kept shifting, disappearing, reappearing somewhere it shouldn't be. Jenkins was 10 yards ahead, half swimming, half crawling through surf that churned pink with blood. Kowalski had vanished into the smoke somewhere to my left. Around me, the living and the dead floated together in a grotesque dance, indistinguishable except for the ones still screaming. A shell hit the beach 50 yards ahead. Sand erupted in a black fountain that hung in the air for a heartbeat before collapsing back down. The explosion's echo rolled across the water like thunder that had forgotten how to stop. I pushed forward. No thought. just motion. Survival reduced to its simplest equation: move or die. The water was shallower now, waist-deep, then thigh-deep. My boots found solid sand and I stumbled forward, legs remembering how to run even as my brain struggled to process what I was seeing. The beach. God in heaven, the beach. It wasn't sand anymore. It was a graveyard being born in real time. Bodies everywhere. Sprawled, twisted, broken. Some still moving, crawling toward cover that didn't exist. Others motionless, their blood seeping into sand that had already drunk its fill. Equipment scattered like discarded toys. Helmets, rifles, packs, boots still containing feet. A man lay face up at the waterline, eyes open to the sky, a perfect hole through his forehead. Another was trying to stuff his intestines back into his belly, working with the focused intensity of someone who hadn't yet realized he was already dead. The machine guns never stopped. MG-42s from the bunkers, firing in long, sustained bursts that sounded like canvas tearing. Bullets kicked up sand in sudden, violent eruptions, little geysers of earth that tracked across the beach like predators hunting. I ran, not toward anything, just away from the water, away from the killing zone where the surf met the sand and men disappeared in sprays of red mist. "Sarge!" Jenkins. He'd made it to a wooden obstacle, a log ramp studded with mines, half buried in sand. He waved frantically, and I angled toward him, legs pumping, lungs burning. A mortar round hit 20 feet to my right. The world went white, then red, then nothing at all. I came back to consciousness, face down in sand, ears ringing so loud I couldn't hear the guns anymore. Just a high-pitched whine that felt like it was coming from inside my skull. My helmet was gone. Blood, mine or someone else's, dripped into my eyes. I pushed up to my hands and knees. The world tilted, spinning like I was drunk. Smoke everywhere. Shapes moving through it, human or otherwise, impossible to tell. "Get up." Someone grabbed my collar, hauled me to my feet. Jenkins. His face was black with soot and blood, teeth bared in something that might have been a grin or a grimace. "Can you walk?" I nodded, or tried to. My legs responded on their second attempt. We moved together, stumbling, dragging each other toward the obstacle. Other men were already there, maybe 8 or 9, pressed flat against the wood and steel, trying to make themselves smaller than human beings could ever be. I collapsed against the barrier, gasping. Every breath tasted like copper and smoke. Lieutenant Morse was there. His Thompson was gone, one arm hanging useless at his side, blood soaking through his jacket. But his eyes were still sharp, still focused. "We're pinned," he said, voice flat, stating fact, not fear. "Can't go forward, can't go back." "What about the engineers?" someone asked. "The Bangalore torpedoes?" "Dead," Morse said. "Most of them went down in the water. The ones that made it got cut down before they could reach the wire." The wire. I'd almost forgotten. Beyond this obstacle, beyond 30 yards of open beach, was the shingle wall, a ridge of stones that might provide actual cover. But between us and that wall was barbed wire, mines, and at least 3 machine gun positions with overlapping fields of fire. We were trapped, caught between the sea and the guns, with nowhere to hide and no way forward. "We need smoke," Jenkins said. "Something to cover our movement." "We need a miracle," someone else muttered. A burst of machine gun fire raked across the top of our obstacle. Wood splintered. One man screamed, hit in the shoulder. He rolled onto his back, clutching the wound, blood pulsing between his fingers. "Medic!" Morse shouted. "We need a medic!" But there were no medics, or if there were, they were already too busy dying to answer. I looked left, then right, trying to assess our situation. Up and down the beach, the story was the same. Men huddled behind obstacles, behind disabled tanks, behind the bodies of the dead. Some were firing back at the bunkers, useless, defiant gestures that accomplished nothing except to give away their positions. Most just cowered and prayed. This was supposed to be a battle, a fight. But you can't fight when you can't move, can't advance, can't even lift your head without machine gun fire turning it to pulp. This wasn't a battle. This was systematic execution. "We have to do something," Jenkins said. His hands were shaking. "We can't just sit here and—" "And what?" I snapped. Harsher than I meant. "Run across that beach, through that wire, straight into those guns?" He didn't answer, because there was no answer. No good options, no clever tactics, just bad choices and worse ones. Kowalski appeared through the smoke, crawling on his belly. His rifle was caked with sand and blood, and one eye was swollen shut. "They got Reeves," he gasped, "and Patterson, and the whole machine gun team, just gone." More names, more dead, the list growing longer by the second. I closed my eyes, tried to think, tried to remember training, doctrine, anything that might help. But every lesson we learned had been based on assumptions that were now revealed as lies. Light resistance, scattered defenses, air support softening the positions before we landed. All of it wrong. The Germans were here, dug in, fortified, and very much ready for us. And we were dying by the hundreds. An explosion shook the beach. Another landing craft hit. I watched it through the smoke. Men pouring from the ramp, cut down before they made it 5 steps. The water around the boat turned dark. Bodies floated away on the tide. "Permission to speak freely, sir?" Everyone looked at Morse. It was Jenkins who'd spoken, voice tight. "Granted," Morse said. "We're all going to die here, aren't we?" Silence, long and heavy. Even the guns seemed to pause, as if waiting for the answer. Morse stared at the beach, at the bodies, at the smoke and fire and chaos. Then he looked back at us. "Probably," he said. "Yeah, probably we are." It was the most honest thing any officer had said to us in months. "But we're not dead yet," he continued. "And until we are, we keep trying. We keep fighting. Because that's what we came here to do." "We came here to take a beach," Kowalski said bitterly. "Not die on one." "Maybe," Morse said. "But sometimes those are the same thing." Another mortar round hit, closer this time. Sand rained down on us, pattering against helmets and equipment. Someone was crying, low sobs that tried to hide themselves and failed. Looked at the beach ahead, at the shingle wall still 30 yards away, at the bluffs beyond, crowned with bunkers and muzzle flashes, at the distance that might as well have been infinity. We couldn't stay here. The Germans had our range. They'd keep dropping mortars until they found us, or the machine guns would get us, or we'd just bleed out from wounds we couldn't treat. But we couldn't move either. Not across that open ground, not through that fire. We were stuck, trapped between what we couldn't survive staying in and what we couldn't survive moving toward. And all around us, men were learning the same terrible lesson. That courage doesn't matter when the bullets are too thick. That bravery is no defense against mathematics. That sometimes the only thing left to do is choose how you want to die. I checked my carbine. Still functional. Magazine half full. My hands had stopped shaking, not because I wasn't afraid, but because fear had burned through its fuel and left only a strange, empty calm. "Sarge?" Jenkins was looking at me, waiting. They were all looking at me, waiting for orders, for leadership, for someone to tell them what to do next. I opened my mouth to speak. And that's when I heard it. A sound that didn't belong on a beach full of dying men. A voice, American, shouting something I couldn't quite make out. And then another voice, and another. Somewhere down the beach, men were moving forward. The voices came from somewhere to our right. Through the smoke and chaos, I caught glimpses of movement. Men rising, running, falling, rising again. "Who the hell is that?" Kowalski asked. I didn't know. Couldn't tell. But they were moving, and that meant something had changed. Some equation had shifted. Some impossible thing had become possible. "We need to see what's happening," I said. Morse nodded, but before he could speak, a burst of machine gun fire tore through the air above us. We pressed flat against the obstacle, wood and sand our only salvation. When the firing paused, I risked a look. Down the beach, maybe 70 yards away, a group of men had made it to the shingle wall. Not many, a dozen, maybe 15. They were firing up at the bluffs, actually engaging the enemy instead of just dying for them. And behind them, others were following. "Jesus," Jenkins whispered. "They're doing it." "Doing what?" Kowalski asked. "Getting killed standing up instead of lying down." "Moving," I said. "They're moving forward." It wasn't much, wasn't organized. No grand assault, no wave of attackers storming the beach. Just small groups of men realizing that dying while advancing was no worse than dying while pinned. And at least one way gave you a chance. "We need to get to that wall," Morse said. His voice had steadied, finding purpose again. "It's the only cover worth a damn on this whole beach." "That's 30 yards of open ground," Kowalski said. "Under direct fire from at least 2 MG positions." "You got a better idea?" Silence. "Didn't think so." Morse checked his pistol. His Thompson was gone, lost somewhere in the water. "We go on 3, low and fast. Don't stop for anything. Don't stop for anyone. You go down, you stay down. Clear?" We all nodded. The kind of agreement that has nothing to do with wanting to and everything to do with running out of alternatives. "Anyone got smoke?" Jenkins asked. No one did. The smoke grenades had gone down with the engineers, or been lost in the water, or were sitting unused in the packs of dead men. "Then we do it naked," Morse said. 1, 2. "Wait," I grabbed his arm. "Not all at once. We go in pairs, staggered, give the guns more targets, spread them out." Morse stared at me for a moment, then nodded. "Good. You and Jenkins first, then Kowalski and Thompson. I'll go with whoever's left." Thompson. I'd almost forgotten about him. He was pressed against the obstacle, so covered in sand and blood I hadn't recognized him. He looked up at the sound of his name, eyes distant. "You good?" I asked. He nodded, lied. But what else could he do? "On 3, Morse said again. 1, 2, 3. Jenkins and I moved. We broke from cover at a dead sprint, angling toward the shingle wall. The beach was a nightmare of obstacles, bodies, craters, wire, debris. Every step was a gamble, every heartbeat borrowed time. The machine guns found us after 3 seconds. Sand erupted to my left, then my right. Bullets snapping past so close I felt them cut the air. Jenkins was screaming something, either encouragement or terror, impossible to tell which. I ran harder, legs pumping, lungs burning, every muscle screaming. The shingle wall looked impossibly far away, growing smaller instead of larger, like I was running on a treadmill built in hell. A body lay directly in my path, I jumped it, landed wrong, stumbled, kept going. Jenkins went down. I heard him fall more than saw it. A heavy thump, a cut-off gasp. I spun around. He was on his stomach, clutching his leg, blood pulsing between his fingers. "Go!" he shouted. "Don't stop!" Every instinct screamed at me to go back, to help him, to not leave him there. But Morse's words echoed, "You go down, you stay down." I turned and ran. Hated myself for it. Ran anyway. The shingle wall rushed up faster than I expected. I hit it at full speed, crashed into the stones, went down in a heap. For a second I just lay there, gasping, waiting for a bullet to find me. It didn't come. I'd made it. Somehow, impossibly, I'd made it. Other men were there, strangers from other units, other boats. A sergeant from the 1st Division, a captain I didn't recognize. A private who couldn't have been older than 18, bleeding from a dozen places, but still firing his M1 up at the bluffs. "Welcome to the party," the sergeant said. His grin was manic. "Hell of a beach, ain't it?" Behind me, Kowalski and Thompson were making their run. I watched them come, counting their steps, praying each one wouldn't be their last. Kowalski zigged left, then right. Thompson ran straight. Too scared or too smart to deviate. They made it. Both of them. Collapsed against the wall, gasping. "Jenkins?" Kowalski asked between breaths. "Down," I said. "Hit in the leg." "He alive?" Was when I left him. Was. Not is. The tense of uncertainty and guilt. Morse came next, running low, pistol in hand. A mortar round hit midway through his sprint. The explosion threw him sideways, and I was sure he was dead. But he rolled, got up, kept coming. When he reached the wall, he collapsed beside me. "Status?" he asked. "5 of us made it," I said. "Jenkins is down, but maybe alive." "Can't go back for him now," Morse said. "Not cruel, just fact. We need to—" A scream cut him off. High-pitched, agonized. From somewhere on the beach behind us. "Medic, I need a medic." The voice was young. Desperate, probably already dying. No one moved to help. Because moving meant dying, and dying didn't save anyone. I forced myself to look at what we'd gained. The shingle wall was maybe 4 feet high, made of smooth stones piled by centuries of tides. Behind it was a narrow strip of sand, then the bluffs rising sharply. Wires stretched across potential paths up. Mines marked by engineer tape, or where engineer tape should have been if the engineers had survived to place it. Above us, the bunkers continued firing. But from here, pressed against the wall, we were in a partial dead zone. The guns couldn't depress far enough to hit us directly. "We're in their shadow," the 1st Division sergeant said. "Only safe spot on the whole damn beach." "Safe is relative," Kowalski muttered, reloading his rifle with shaking hands. "Safe." The word felt obscene here. But he was right. Relatively speaking, we were safer than we'd been since the ramp dropped. "What now?" Thompson asked. His voice was raw, broken. "Good question. We'd made it to the wall. But the mission wasn't to reach the wall. It was to take the beach, to push inland, to secure the draws that would let armor and supplies move up. And the draws were still held by the Germans. "We need more men," Morse said. "We can't assault those positions with 5 guys." "More men are coming," the captain said. He was watching the beach through binoculars, tracking the landing craft still making their runs. Some of them, anyway. Most are getting chewed up in the surf. I looked back at the waterline. More boats, more men, more bodies. The tide was coming in, floating the dead back toward shore like the sea was trying to return what it couldn't digest. How many had we lost already? Half the company? More? "Hey," Kowalski nudged me. You okay? No, I said honestly. Yeah, me neither. A shell hit the beach behind us. Then another. The Germans were adjusting their mortars, walking rounds up toward our position. We need to move, Morse said. Find a way up those bluffs before they zero in on this wall. There's a draw, the sergeant said, pointing. About 100 yards that way. Supposed to be the main exit route. But it's covered by at least 3 bunkers and mine to hell. So we find another way, I said. There is no other way. It's wire and cliffs everywhere else. Trapped again. Different location, same problem. We couldn't stay here, couldn't go back. And going forward meant straight into the teeth of the German defenses. I thought about Jenkins, lying somewhere on that beach. About Sullivan, sinking in water that had already forgotten him. About Henley and Daniels and all the others whose names I'd never know. Dead because of bad intelligence, bad planning, bad luck. Or maybe just because war doesn't care about good or bad. It just grinds forward, taking what it wants, leaving pieces behind. Sarge. I looked at Kowalski. He was staring at something up the bluff. What? That bunker, the one on the left. It stopped firing. He was right. One of the MG-42 positions had gone silent. Not destroyed, I would have seen the explosion. Just quiet. Crew change? Thompson suggested. Barrel swap. Or they're out of ammo, the sergeant said. Those guns eat through belts fast. Or it's a trap, Morse said. They want us to think it's safe. Maybe, probably. But it was also an opportunity, a gap in the teeth, and gaps closed fast in war. We need to move now, I said, before they get that gun back up. Morse looked at me, at the silent bunker, at the impossible slope we'd have to climb. Then he nodded. Get everyone you can find, he said. Anyone who can still fight. We're going up. June 6th, 1944, 7:18 a.m. Base of the Bluffs. Dog Green Sector. We gathered what we could. 12 men total. Mix of units, mix of ranks. Some I recognized from our boat. Most were strangers, faces I'd never seen before and might never see again. The 1st Division Sergeant, his name was Briggs, did a quick weapons check. 5 M1s, 3 carbines, 2 BARs, 1 Thompson, and Morse's pistol. Not much to assault a fortified position with, but more than we'd had 5 minutes ago. Listen up, Morse said, voice low. That bunker's quiet. We don't know for how long. Could be 30 seconds, could be 3 minutes. Either way, we move fast and we move now. What about the wire? Someone asked. Bangalore teams are gone, Briggs said. We go through it the old way. Cutters, grenades, whatever works. Just keep moving. And if that bunker opens up again? Thompson's voice cracked on the last word. Morse looked at him. At all of us. Then some of us die, but some of us might make it. And that's better odds than staying here. No one argued. Arguing required hope, and hope was in short supply. Pairs again, I said. Leapfrog advance. 1 pair moves, 1 covers. Briggs, you take the left side. I'll take right. Morse, you're... I'm going first, Morse said. Sir, your arm... I'm going first. His tone left no room for debate. That's an order. He was right to do it. Officers who sent men where they wouldn't go themselves didn't last long. Not in respect, not in memory. On your mark, Briggs said, checking his M1. Morse took a breath, closed his eyes for just a second. When he opened them, something had changed. The fear was still there, but it had been pressed down beneath something harder. For the men on the beach, he said quietly. Then he moved. He went up the slope at a crouch, pistol leading. The bluff wasn't quite vertical here. Maybe a 45-degree angle, loose sand and shale that shifted with every step. Above him, the bunker remained silent, dark, waiting. Briggs and another soldier followed, angling left. Then Kowalski and I went right, moving low, weapons up. The wire came faster than expected. Thick coils of it, rusted and cruel, stretched between wooden posts. Some sections had been blown apart by naval gunfire, but most remained intact. "Wire cutters," I hissed. Kowalski pulled out his cutters and went to work. The metal resisted, then gave with small, sharp snaps that sounded impossibly loud. Each cut felt like a gunshot announcing our presence. Above us, Morse had stopped at the first strand, working his own section, making progress. The silent bunker stared down at all of us. 15 seconds passed. 20. 30. I started to think we might actually make it. Then the bunker woke up. The MG-42 opened fire with that distinctive ripping canvas sound. Tracers arced out into the gray morning, searching. The first burst went wide, over our heads, out toward the beach. But they were adjusting. "Move," Briggs screamed. "Get through the wire." Morse was through his section. He scrambled higher, boots slipping in loose soil. 2 men followed him. A third was caught in the wire, tangled, pulling frantically. The machine gun found him. The burst lasted maybe 2 seconds. He jerked like a puppet with cut strings, then went still, hanging from the wire like a piece of bloody laundry. "Go! Go!" I shoved Kowalski through the gap he'd cut, followed him, felt barbs tear at my jacket, my skin. Didn't care. We were through. The slope ahead was open ground, 30 yards to the bunker entrance. No cover except small rocks and prayer. "Grenades!" Morse yelled. "Hit that firing port!" Someone threw. The grenade fell short, rolled back down the slope, exploded harmlessly in the wire. Another throw. This one went long, bounced off the concrete, detonated behind the position. The machine gun kept firing, tracking left, then right, methodical and deadly. A man went down screaming. Then another. Briggs was shouting coordinates, trying to organize return fire that couldn't touch a target behind 3 feet of reinforced concrete. We were failing. The assault was collapsing before it even began. "We need to fall back," Thompson yelled. "Regroup." "Fall back to what?" Kowalski shouted. "The beach, where we're just better targets?" He was right. There was no falling back, no regrouping. We'd committed to this climb, and the only directions left were up or dead. I looked at the bunker, at the firing port spitting flame, at the impossible distance between us and it. Then I saw it, a drainage ditch, running up the right side of the slope, probably cut by rain over the years, deep enough to provide cover, narrow enough that the machine gun couldn't track into it. "There," I pointed. "That ditch. We can flank them." Morse saw it too. "Briggs, suppressing fire on that port. Everyone else, follow the sergeant." I didn't wait for confirmation. Didn't think. Just moved. I rolled into the ditch and immediately started crawling. The walls were maybe 2 feet high, not much, but enough to hide me from the bunker's direct line of sight. Behind me, I heard bodies sliding in. Kowalski, Thompson, 2 others I didn't know. The ditch climbed at a steep angle. My hands found purchase in mud and loose rock. Boots scraped and slipped. Above me, the machine gun kept firing, but it was shooting at Morse's group now, not us. We were invisible. For the moment. I crawled faster. The ditch curved slightly left, bringing us closer to the bunker's flank. 20 yards, 15, 10. Close enough to hear voices inside. German voices, shouting coordinates, calling for more ammunition, close enough to see the bunker's entrance. A low doorway cut into the hillside, partially concealed by camouflage netting, close enough to do something. I looked back at the men behind me. 4 of them. Young faces, old eyes. All of them terrified. All of them still moving. "Grenades," I whispered. "We get close, throw everything we have through that door. Then we go in shooting." "That's suicide," one of the soldiers said. "So is everything else," Kowalski replied. Thompson pulled a grenade from his belt. His hands were steady now. Fear had burned through to something else, something harder. "For Jenkins," he said quietly. We crept forward. 5 yards. 3. The bunker entrance was right there, so close I could smell the cordite and sweat pouring from inside. I pulled my grenade, felt the weight of it, the promise of it. This was the moment, the irreversible choice, the point where survival and mission became the same thing, because going back wasn't an option anymore. Behind us, Morse's group was still firing, still dying, still buying us time we didn't deserve. I looked at my men, at their faces waiting for the order, and I realized something. I'd stopped being afraid. Not because I was brave, not because I'd found courage hidden somewhere on this beach, but because fear requires a future, and I'd stopped believing in one. All that was left was the next 5 seconds, the next grenade, the next breath. "On 3, I whispered. The machine gun fired again. Morse screamed something I couldn't make out. 1. Kowalski pulled his pin. 2. Thompson gripped his rifle so hard I thought the wood might crack. 3. We threw. 4 grenades spinning through the air, through the doorway, into the concrete belly of the beast. The explosions came as one. Flash and thunder contained by walls that turned the blast inward, multiplying its force. The machine gun stopped. Silence rushed in to fill the space it left. And in that silence, I heard something I hadn't heard since the ramp dropped. A chance. "Go!" I surged forward, carbine leading, through the entrance, into smoke and darkness and whatever came next. Behind me, my men followed, because that's what soldiers do, even when they know better, especially when they know better. June 6th, 1944, 7:31 a.m., inside German bunker, Dog Green sector. The smoke was so thick I couldn't see my hand in front of my face. I moved forward blind, carbine sweeping left and right, finger on the trigger, every nerve screaming. The air tasted like cordite and copper. Something wet under my boots, blood, water, both, impossible to tell. Behind me, boots scuffing concrete, my men following, breathing hard, no one speaking. The bunker walls pressed in close, concrete sweating moisture, the smell of spent ammunition and fear. A shape materialized through the smoke. Gray uniform, helmet, German. He was turning toward me, rifle coming up, mouth opening to shout. I fired first, 3 round center mass. The muzzle flash lit his face for half a second. Young, shocked, already dead. He went down without a sound. "Contact!" Kowalski yelled behind me. More shapes, moving in the smoke. The confined space turned every sound into chaos. Gunshots overlapping, ricochets screaming off concrete, men shouting in 2 languages. I kept moving forward. Had to. Stopping meant dying, and dying meant the men behind me died too. The corridor opened into a wider room. The gun position. I could see it now through the clearing smoke. The MG-42 on its mount. Belt of ammunition hanging limp, brass casings scattered like gold coins across blood-slicked floor. 3 German soldiers. 1 dead against the wall, torn apart by our grenades. Another crawling toward a rifle, left leg gone below the knee. the third reaching for a pistol on his belt. Thompson shot the crawler. 2 rounds, mercy or murder, depending on how you counted it. I put 2 in the one going for his pistol. He dropped, sliding down the wall, leaving a red smear. Silence crashed in, ringing, absolute, broken only by ragged breathing and the distant sound of gunfire from the beach below. "Clear," Kowalski said, checking corners, making sure. "Clear," Thompson echoed. I moved to the firing port, looked out at the beach. God in heaven. From up here, I could see everything. The whole terrible scope of it. Bodies stretching from the waterline to the shingle wall, burned-out landing craft, disabled tanks, equipment scattered across sand turned dark with blood, and still more boats coming in, still more men dying in the surf. But I could also see movement, men reaching the wall, small groups organizing, pushing forward, not many, not enough, but some. We'd taken one bunker, one position, one tiny piece of the Atlantic wall. It wasn't much, but it was something. "Sarge." Kowalski was at the rear entrance, looking back down the slope. "Morse is coming up. What's left of his group?" I watched them climb, 5 men, out of 12 who'd started. Morse in the lead, one arm still hanging useless, but moving like a man who'd forgotten he was wounded. They reached the bunker and collapsed inside, gasping. "Status?" Morse asked immediately. "Position secured," I said. 3 enemy KIA, guns intact." "Good." He moved to the firing port, looked out, then nodded. "We can use this. Cover the beach, support the other groups trying to get up." "What about the other bunkers?" Thompson asked. "They're still firing." "One thing at a time," Morse said. "Briggs, get on that MG. Start suppressing the positions to our left. Kowalski, you and—" An explosion cut him off. Close. The bunker shook, dust falling from the ceiling. "Mortars," someone said. "They know we're here." Another explosion. Closer. Concrete cracked somewhere above us. "They're going to bury us," Thompson said, voice rising. "They're going to bring this whole thing down on our heads." He wasn't wrong. The Germans would have registered coordinates for every bunker. If one went silent, they'd shell it. Standard doctrine: deny the position to the enemy even if it meant destroying your own fortifications. "We can't stay here," I said. "We can't leave either," Morse countered. "This position controls the whole sector. We give it up, everyone on that beach dies." He was right too. From here, we could see and suppress multiple German positions. We could guide men up, provide covering fire, turn one small victory into something bigger. But staying meant dying. "How long?" Kowalski asked, looking at me, at Morse, at anyone who might have an answer. "Long enough," Morse said. Long enough for what? He didn't specify. Long enough for reinforcements to make it up. Long enough for the beach to be secured. Long enough to matter. Or just long enough to die doing something useful. Another shell hit. The whole bunker lurched. Part of the ceiling collapsed in the back room. Dust and debris everywhere. "Sir." It was one of the soldiers I didn't know. Young kid. Badge said his name was Walker. "Permission to speak?" "Granted." "What happens if we all die here? Who tells our families we tried?" The question hung in the smoke and dust. Morse looked at him. At all of us. And for the first time since the ramp dropped, I saw something like despair crack through his armor. "I don't know, son," he said quietly. "I don't know." The honesty of it was worse than any lie. "Then I guess we better not all die," Kowalski said. just to keep things simple. Someone laughed, rough and bitter, but real. "Briggs," Morse said, "get on that gun. Everyone else, grab ammunition from the Germans. We're about to get very popular." We moved into position. Briggs swung the MG-42 toward the adjacent bunkers and opened fire. The gun roared, spitting brass, tracers arcing out toward enemy positions. Return fire came immediately, bullets sparking off the concrete around the firing port. I grabbed a German rifle from one of the dead soldiers. Mauser, still loaded. I moved to a crack in the wall and started firing at targets of opportunity. German soldiers moving in trenches, heads appearing at other firing ports, anything that presented itself. The world collapsed into a simple rhythm: aim, fire, chamber, aim, fire, chamber. No thought, no fear, just motion. Another mortar round hit. This one struck the bunker's roof directly. The explosion was enormous. The ceiling cracked with a sound like the world breaking. Chunks of concrete the size of cars crashed down, crushing everything beneath them. The rear entrance collapsed completely. Sealed. We were trapped inside. "Keep firing," Morse shouted. "Don't stop." I didn't stop. None of us did. Because stopping meant thinking, and thinking meant realizing we were all dead men still moving. Through the firing port, I saw more Americans reaching the shingle wall. Dozens now. Maybe 100. Some were setting up mortars. Others were organizing into assault teams. The beach was still a slaughterhouse, but it was becoming an organized slaughterhouse. Chaos giving way to something like a battle. "Sarge!" Kowalski was pointing down the slope. "Someone's trying to get up. Looks like, I think it's Jenkins." I moved to the port. Squinted through smoke and distance. It was Jenkins. Crawling, dragging his wounded leg behind him, moving inches at a time. Blood trail marking his path. "Cover him!" I yelled. Briggs swung the MG toward the German positions that had line of sight on Jenkins. Opened up. Long bursts that ate through the ammunition belt. Brass rained down around his feet like hail. Jenkins kept crawling. So slow, so painfully slow. A German soldier rose from a trench with a rifle. I shot him before he could aim. Another appeared. Kowalski got that one. We were burning through ammunition, but Jenkins was still moving, still alive. 20 yards from the bunker, 15, 10. A mortar round landed 5 yards behind him. The explosion lifted him off the ground, threw him forward like a doll. He landed hard, didn't move. "Jenkins," I was moving before I thought about it. To the entrance. The entrance was gone, buried under tons of concrete and earth. "We're sealed in," Thompson said. Statement of fact. No emotion left. We were trapped in a bunker that was being systematically destroyed by German artillery. With limited ammunition, no way out, and maybe 10 minutes before the whole structure collapsed on our heads. Morse checked his pistol. 3 rounds left. He looked at each of us in turn. "Anyone want to surrender?" he asked. No one answered, because surrender meant stepping outside into German gun sights, meant being shot against this same concrete we'd fought to take, meant dying without even the dignity of defiance. "Didn't think so," Morse said. "Then we keep fighting until we can't. That's all we got." Another shell hit. The walls cracked, the floor tilted. The bunker was dying around us, and we were dying with it. But through the firing port, I could see the beach. See men advancing, see more landing craft making it in. See the impossible slowly, painfully becoming possible. We'd bought them time. Minutes. Maybe just seconds. But in those seconds, men who would have died instead lived. Made it to cover, organized, pushed forward. One bunker, one small victory. It wouldn't save us, but it might save them. I raised the Mauser again, found a target, fired. The gun kicked against my shoulder. The brass ejected. The round flew true. And for just a moment, I felt something I'd thought I'd lost somewhere in the water between the boat and the beach. Purpose. Not courage, not bravery, not any of those words that tried to make war noble. Just purpose. The simple, clean knowledge that what I was doing mattered. That every round fired, every second held, every breath taken in this concrete tomb bought time for men I'd never meet to, maybe, possibly survive. It was a small thing, but small things were all we had. "Sir," Briggs yelled, "gun's jammed." Morse moved to help him, cleared the stoppage. The MG-42 roared back to life. Another shell, another crack spreading across the ceiling. More dust, more debris. Time was running out. The bunker was going to fall. We were going to die here. But not yet. Not quite yet. "Keep firing," I shouted, to myself as much as anyone, and we did. Because that's what soldiers do when there's nothing left but the next trigger pull. When hope is gone, but duty remains. When the only victory left is choosing how you fall. We kept firing, into the smoke, into the chaos, into whatever came next. The ceiling groaned, a final warning. But before it could fall, I saw something through the firing port that stopped my heart. American infantry, a full platoon, maybe 40 men, advancing up the bluff in organized rushes, using the fire lanes we'd suppressed, moving like soldiers instead of panicked animals. "Look," I grabbed Morse's shoulder, "they're getting through." He looked, saw what I saw, and something changed in his face. Relief, vindication, the knowledge that dying might actually mean something. "Keep them covered," he shouted. "Buy them every second we can." Briggs hammered the MG-42, sweeping fire across the German positions. I went back to the Mauser, picking targets, dropping them. A German officer trying to rally his men, a machine gunner setting up in an exposed position, a soldier with a Panzerfaust aimed at the advancing Americans. Each shot felt like adding a second to a clock that was running down too fast. The American platoon hit the wire. Bangalore teams moved forward this time. The engineers had learned from the first wave's massacre. They placed their charges, pulled back, detonated. Wire exploded upward in twisted metal flowers. The infantry poured through. "They're gonna make it," Thompson said. Wonder in his voice, like he'd forgotten that was even possible. Another mortar round hit our bunker. This one punched through what was left of the roof. Concrete rained down. The whole structure shuddered, tilting at an angle that defied physics. "Evacuate!" someone screamed. "Where?" Kowalski yelled back. "The exits are buried." He was right. We were entombed. The bunker had become our coffin. But that platoon was still advancing, still needed covering fire, still needed every second we could give them. I kept firing. The Mauser ran dry. I dropped it, grabbed a German MP-40 from one of the bodies. The submachine gun felt wrong in my hands. Light, unfamiliar. But it fired when I pulled the trigger. And that was all that mattered. Briggs was crying. I could see it even through the smoke and dust, tears cutting clean lines through the grime on his face. But his hands never left the gun. He kept firing even as he wept. The American platoon reached the German trenches. Hand-to-hand fighting, grenades, bayonets. The kind of brutal, intimate violence that happened when men ran out of distance and had to settle things with steel and desperation. "Come on," Morse whispered. "Come on." I didn't know if he was talking to the Americans or to God or to the bunker itself. Maybe all three. A massive explosion shook the hilltop. One of the other German bunkers going up. Someone had gotten close enough with satchel charges or a flamethrower. Black smoke billowed from the position. The German defense was fracturing, breaking, not collapsing. They'd fight to the last man, we knew that now. But losing cohesion, losing coordination, losing. "We did it," Walker said. His voice sounded young again, hopeful. "We actually—" The ceiling came down, not all at once, in sections, massive slabs of reinforced concrete peeling away like skin. The first piece hit Walker, crushed him flat before he could scream. Just there, then gone, replaced by rubble and a spreading pool of red. "Move." Morse shoved Kowalski toward the firing port. "Get out through the—" Another section fell, caught Morse across the shoulders, drove him to his knees. He looked up at me, blood on his lips, eyes still clear. "Go," he said. I grabbed his good arm, tried to pull him free, but the concrete had him pinned, and it was still falling, and there wasn't time. "Go," he shouted. "That's an order, Sergeant." The last order he'd ever give. I went, dove through the firing port. It was too small, not designed for exit, but fear and adrenaline made me compact. I squeezed through, scraping skin, tearing uniform, feeling concrete scrape against bone. I fell 12 feet and hit the slope hard. Tumbled, rolled, crashed into something soft that groaned. Jenkins, he was still alive, barely. His leg was gone below the knee, tourniquet holding back blood that wanted to pour out. His eyes found mine. "Hey, Sarge," he whispered. "Told you I'd make it." Behind us, the bunker collapsed completely. The sound was apocalyptic, tons of concrete and earth falling into the space where men had just been standing. Dust billowed out in a gray wave that swallowed everything. Silence followed, heavy and complete. Then, slowly, other sounds filtered back. Gunfire, shouting, the distant boom of naval guns still pounding the coast. I looked down the slope. The American platoon had taken the trenches, were pushing inland. More men were coming up behind them now. The breach was widening. The beach was still hell, still killing, still taking its terrible toll. But it was no longer taking everything. "Did we win?" Jenkins asked. I looked at the collapsed bunker, at the bodies scattered across the bluff, at the smoke and fire and devastation, at Jenkins, who'd crawled half a mile with one leg, at the Americans advancing where an hour ago there'd been only dying. "I don't know," I said honestly, "but we're still here." He closed his eyes, smiled. Good enough. A medic appeared from somewhere, started working on Jenkins. Morphine, pressure bandages, words of comfort that sounded like lies but weren't. I stood. My legs shook but held. I picked up a rifle from the ground, American, German, didn't matter anymore, and started walking up the bluff. Because the fight wasn't over. Wouldn't be over for hours, maybe days. But for the first time since the ramp dropped, I believed we might survive it. Not all of us. God knew not all of us. But some. Some of us might make it home with stories we'd never be able to tell about a beach where courage and terror were the same thing. Where duty meant dying slow instead of fast. Where victory looked like surviving the next 5 seconds. Behind me, the bunker smoldered. Morse was in there. Briggs, Walker, Thompson, Kowalski. Men who'd held a position they couldn't keep long enough for men they'd never meet to push past it. Heroes, probably. Though none of them would have used that word. I reached the crest of the bluff. Looked back at Omaha Beach. The tide was coming in, floating bodies back toward shore. Landing craft still burning in the surf. But also, men advancing, Armor rolling in, supplies being unloaded, a beach being taken. 1 yard, 1 bunker, 1 life at a time. I turned inland, toward France, toward whatever came next. The day was still young, and there were still miles to go. The world had gone quiet. Not silent, gunfire still crackled in the distance, shells still whistled overhead, men still shouted commands I couldn't quite hear. But all of it felt muted, distant, like I was listening through water. My ears were ringing. Had been since the bunker collapsed. A high-pitched whine that turned everything else into background noise. I sat on a broken piece of German trench wall, rifle across my knees, and tried to remember how to breathe normally. Around me, the hilltop was a battlefield in miniature. Dead Germans in their gray uniforms. Dead Americans in olive drab. Abandoned weapons. Scattered equipment. A helmet with a hole through it. A boot with a foot still inside. The smoking ruins of the bunker sat 30 yards behind me. I hadn't looked at it directly since climbing out. Couldn't. Because looking meant acknowledging what was buried beneath those tons of concrete and earth. Who was buried? Morse, Briggs, Thompson, Kowalski, Walker. 5 men who'd followed me into hell because I'd told them to. 5 men who weren't coming back. A lieutenant I didn't recognize appeared beside me. Young, clean uniform, fresh from the beach. "Sergeant, you injured?" I looked at him, tried to process the question. Injured? Was I injured? I looked down at myself. My uniform was torn in a dozen places, blood soaked through in spots I couldn't remember getting hit. My hands were shaking. When had they started shaking? "No," I said. My voice sounded wrong, hollow. "I'm fine." The lie felt important somehow, like admitting injury would mean admitting something larger, something I wasn't ready to face. "We're organizing a perimeter," the lieutenant said. "Getting ready to push inland. I need every man who can still fight." I nodded. Stood. My legs held. That seemed like enough. "What unit are you?" he asked. "Company A, 116th. His expression shifted. Something like pity crossed his face before he could hide it. "You boys took the worst of it at Dog Green," he said quietly. "Heard most of the company didn't make it off the beach." Most of the company. The words hung there, refusing to dissolve. I'd started this morning with a company. 32 men in my boat alone. Good men. Young men. Men with families and futures and photographs in their pockets of people who'd never see them again. How many were left? 5? 10? How many mothers would get telegrams because I'd told their sons to run into machine gun fire? "Sergeant?" I realized the lieutenant was still talking. Had been talking. I'd lost track. "Sorry, sir." "Say again?" "I asked if you're good to move out. We're advancing on the village. Need to secure it before—" "I need a minute," I said. Not asked. Said. He studied me for a moment, then nodded. 5 minutes. Then we move. He walked away, leaving me alone with the dead and the ringing in my ears. I sat back down, picked up my carbine, started checking it mechanically. Magazine, chamber, action. The ritual of it familiar, comforting in its simplicity. My hands were still shaking. I looked at the beach below. From up here, I could see the whole scope of it. The water still churning with incoming boats, the sand still covered with bodies. But also, men moving inland, tanks rolling off the landing craft, supply dumps being established, engineers clearing obstacles. We'd taken the beach. The cost had been obscene. Hundreds dead, maybe thousands. I didn't know the numbers yet. Wasn't sure I wanted to. But we'd taken it. That had to mean something, didn't it? A medic passed by, helping a wounded soldier. The wounded man's arm was gone at the elbow, tourniquet tight, his face pale as paper. But he was walking, moving, still fighting gravity and shock and the reality of what he'd lost. "Hey," I called out. "You seen a guy named Jenkins, hit in the leg? I left him down the slope about 20 minutes ago." The medic paused. "Jenkins? Yeah. Evac'd him down to the beach. He'll live. Lose the leg, but he'll live." He moved on before I could respond. Jenkins would live. One man, one small victory against the mathematics of slaughter. It should have felt like more. I closed my eyes, tried to find something inside myself that felt like relief or satisfaction or vindication. Some emotion that matched what we'd accomplished. But all I found was emptiness, hollow, scraped clean, like someone had reached inside and removed everything that used to make me human, leaving only the parts that knew how to fight and follow orders. Maybe that's what courage was. Not some noble quality you carried, not some reserve of strength you drew from, just the absence of everything else. Fear burned away, hope exhausted, humanity stripped down to simple motion because motion was the only thing left. We hadn't won because we were brave. We'd won because we'd run out of options for anything else. Footsteps behind me. I turned, hand instinctively moving toward my rifle. It was Jenkins. No, not Jenkins. A soldier who looked like him. Same build, same age. But a stranger. Someone I'd never seen before. "You okay, Sarge?" the soldier asked. "Yeah," I said. Another lie, getting easier each time. "First time?" "First time what?" "Losing your squad." I looked at him, really looked, saw the same hollowness in his eyes that I felt in my chest, the same exhaustion that went deeper than muscle or bone. "Yeah," I said quietly. "First time." "Gets easier," he said. "Does it?" He paused, considered. "No, but you get used to lying about it." He walked away, and I was alone again. I thought about Morse, about his last order. Go, simple, clear, the kind of command that didn't leave room for argument or hesitation. He died so I could live, so I could squeeze through that firing port and fall down the slope and keep fighting. Why? What made my life worth more than his? What mathematics of war decided that a sergeant should survive while a lieutenant got crushed under concrete? There was no answer, no reason, just chance and physics and the random cruelty of metal falling in a confined space. The lieutenant reappeared. "Time's up, Sergeant. We're moving." I stood, checked my rifle one more time, found a helmet that fit, picked up ammunition from a dead German, became a soldier again, because that's what the moment required. But as I fell in with the advancing column, moving toward the village and whatever waited there, I carried something new, a knowledge I hadn't possessed when the ramp dropped. That war didn't care about courage or fear or any of the words we used to make sense of it. War cared about who was standing when the shooting stopped, about who could keep moving when movement seemed impossible, about who could survive the knowledge that survival meant others didn't. Morse had said we were all going to die. He'd been half right. Some of us died, some of us didn't. And the ones who didn't had to live with the understanding that the difference was arbitrary, random, meaningless. We weren't heroes. We were just the ones still breathing. And that was the truth they'd never put on monuments or tell in stories back home. That victory tastes like ash. That courage is just exhaustion with a rifle. That the hardest part of war isn't dying. It's living with what you did to stay alive. I kept walking, toward France, toward the war that still had months or years left to grind through, toward a future that felt less like promise and more like sentence. Behind me, Omaha Beach continued its work, taking its toll, counting its dead, adding names to a list that would never stop growing. And somewhere in that list, in ink or memory, or the terrible accounting that happens after battle's end, were the names of men I'd led into fire. Men who trusted me. Men who died doing what I told them to do. That weight would never leave. I understood that now. It wasn't supposed to. The village was silent when we reached it. Not peaceful, not empty. Just silent in the way places become when violence has passed through and left only questions behind. We moved through streets too narrow for tanks, past stone houses with their shutters closed and doors barred, checking corners, clearing rooms, finding nothing but abandoned German equipment and the occasional dead soldier who'd bled out alone. The fighting had moved inland. We could hear it in the distance, artillery, small arms, the sounds of war grinding forward like it always did. But here, in this small French village that no one back home would ever hear about, there was only quiet. I sat on the steps of a church. Its steeple had taken a shell during the naval bombardment, the top half sheared away, leaving jagged stone pointing at a sky that had finally cleared to blue. Afternoon sun, warm on my face. Wrong somehow. Like the world had forgotten what happened this morning and moved on without asking permission. Around me, what was left of the company gathered. 17 men, out of nearly 200 who'd started the day. 17. The number didn't feel real. Couldn't be real. But I counted them 3 times and got the same answer. A supply truck had made it up from the beach. Hot coffee, K rations, cigarettes. The small mercies that appeared after battles, as if food and tobacco could fill the spaces where men used to be. I accepted a cup of coffee. Didn't drink it. Just held it, feeling the warmth against my palms, watching steam rise and disappear into air that still smelled like cordite and death. A chaplain was making his rounds, offering comfort, taking names of the dead so someone could write letters to families who didn't know they were already mourning. He stopped beside me. "Son, you want to talk?" I looked at him. Young guy. Probably saw his first combat today too, trying to make sense of it with Bible verses and platitudes. "No, sir," I said. "Thank you." He nodded, moved on. What else could he do? Jenkins was down at the beach still, in a field hospital. They'd save his life and take his leg and send him home to a wife who'd have to learn to love a different version of the man she married. Morse was under tons of concrete, along with Briggs and Thompson and Kowalski and Walker and all the others whose names I was already starting to forget. Not because I wanted to, but because the mind protects itself sometimes by letting go of what it can't carry. I pulled out my pocket watch, the one my father had given me before I shipped out. It had stopped at 6:47. Water damage, probably, or shock from an explosion. The hands frozen at the moment when everything changed. I wound it, set it to the correct time, listened to it tick, time moving forward, whether we were ready or not. "Sarge?" I looked up. It was one of the new guys. Replacement who'd come up after we took the bluffs. His name was Carter, Collins. I couldn't remember. "They're saying we advance again tomorrow, push for St. Lo." Tomorrow, as if today hadn't been enough, as if we hadn't already paid more than any objective was worth. But that was the thing about war. It didn't ask if you'd paid enough, it just kept taking until you had nothing left or the shooting stopped. "Yeah," I said. "Probably." He stood there, waiting for something, leadership maybe, wisdom, some words that would make sense of what we'd survived. I had nothing to give him. "Get some rest," I said finally. We'll figure out tomorrow when it comes." He nodded and walked away, and I was grateful he didn't ask for more. I looked back toward the coast. Couldn't see the beach from here, but I could see the smoke. Black columns rising from burning equipment. Gray haze hanging over water that would be red for hours yet. Omaha Beach. We'd taken it. Thousands had died for 4 miles of sand and a few hundred feet of bluff. Died for a foothold in France. Died so the war could move forward, so the next battle could be fought, so the thing we'd started could be finished. Was it worth it? I didn't know. Wasn't sure anyone did. Wasn't sure anyone could know until years from now, when historians counted the cost and weighed it against what came after. All I knew was that men I'd eaten breakfast with were gone. That boys who'd never kissed a girl had bled out in surf that didn't care about their dreams. That good men had died doing what they were told because someone with more rank and less fear decided a beach was worth taking. And we'd taken it. That had to mean something, even if I couldn't feel what that something was. A wind came up. Cool. Carrying the salt smell of the ocean mixed with smoke and cordite. I closed my eyes and let it wash over me. When I opened them again, the sun was lower. Orange light painting the damaged church and the broken streets and the tired faces of men who'd learned too much too fast about what they were capable of surviving. Tomorrow we'd fight again, and the day after, and the day after that. Until the war ended, or we did. But tonight, there was this quiet moment in a ruined village, this coffee going cold in my hands, this breath I took and released and took again, this evidence that I was still alive, even if I didn't quite feel like I was. The chaplain was praying somewhere. I could hear his voice, low and steady, saying words about sacrifice and duty and God's plan. I didn't pray. Couldn't. Didn't know what I'd say if I did. Instead, I thought about Morse giving his last order, about Jenkins crawling with one leg, about Kowalski making jokes while the ceiling came down, about all the small, stubborn acts of courage that happened when no one was watching and nothing was recording them for history. That's what I'd remember. Not the beach, not the blood, not the numbers or the tactics or the grand sweep of it. But the men, the ones who'd stood when standing was impossible, who'd moved when movement was death, who'd kept fighting not because they were heroes, but because the alternative was giving up. And giving up meant everything they'd already lost meant nothing. We'd survived Omaha. Some of us. The ones who hadn't deserved better than what they got. Deserved to go home. Deserved futures that would never come. But war doesn't deal in deserving. It deals in who's left when the shooting stops. And we were left, carrying their names, their memory, the weight of being the ones who made it through. I stood, poured out the cold coffee, picked up my rifle. Tomorrow would come. And when it did, I'd be ready. Not because I wanted to fight, but because men had died buying me the chance to keep fighting. And the only way to honor that was to keep moving forward. Even when forward meant into more smoke, more fire, more days like this one. I looked one last time at the church, at its broken steeple pointing toward sky. Then I turned inland, toward France, toward whatever came next. The war wasn't over, but the longest day was, and I'd survived it. That would have to be enough. The beach was ours, but none of us were. We'd left pieces of ourselves in that sand, pieces we'd never get back. The ones who died gave everything. The ones who lived gave something worse. The parts of themselves that believed in clean victories and noble wars. What remained was simpler, harder, truer. We'd done what was asked, paid what was demanded, survived what was unsurvivable. And now we carried it forward. Every step inland was a step away from Omaha. But Omaha would never be behind us. It would walk with us through every village, every field, every battle still to come. The waves kept coming that night, washing up on sand that had drunk its fill of blood, washing the dead back toward shore like the sea was trying to return what it never wanted in the first place. And somewhere in England, telegrams were being written. We regret to inform you. But that was someone else's war now. Someone else's grief. Mine was simpler. I was alive, and I'd never forgive myself for it.